The Idries Shah Foundation podcast. Practical Psychology for Today. Featuring the works of Idries Shah, voiced by David Ault. Welcome to the Idries Shah Foundation podcast. In this edition of the podcast, we will hear selections from Reflections by Idries Shah. This audio has been made available by the Idries Shah Foundation. Belief and the Impossible. There is a saying, "Credo quia impossibile," I believe it because it is impossible. But if you make any study of people in a state of what they are pleased to call belief, you will find that you can usually best describe them by saying, "I believe because I am impossible," or even, "My belief has made me impossible." Why he was chosen. The disciple of a dervish master, whose name resounded from one end of Islam to the other, one day visited the Grand Sheikh of Khorasan. "I have been honoured by my acceptance as a pupil," he said, "singled out from among the hundreds who approach my master every day, and yet are sent away." "My dear brother," said the Grand Sheikh, "I will try to further your education by giving you a piece of essential information. You were chosen because of being in the greatest need of teaching, not because of qualities greater than those of the other applicants." New names. People rename things and even other people. This makes them think that they are different from what they were before. Let us take a neutral example. Have you noticed how even at present the majority of buildings are made of mud, but people will not have it that they live in mud houses? Every home is also an imitation of a cave, but we do not think much of cave dwellers, so they are called houses. The dervishes from the other world. 3 dervishes returned from the other world. People, understanding that they had become altered and wanting to follow their path, asked what had helped them. "Peas pudding," said the first. "The Book of Wisdom," said the second. "Following a certain man alone," said the third. Some people thought that they were mad. Some thought that they were deliberately speaking in riddles. Some thought that this or that way was the one to follow. In reality, however, each had benefited from his own capacity and needs, in accordance with certain patterns which are only known to the men of greatest wisdom. Clever and profound. Statements which are merely clever and which have no development potential are often imagined to be profound because they look or sound attractive. And profound remarks which have indeed got development potential are as often deemed to be no more than clever. The reason. The cat said, "What funny faces mice have. That's why I have to destroy them." Epoch making. People who find it necessary to describe their activity as epoch-making are more often than not deluded. They try to make epochs because in this way their own importance will be created or increased in the minds of others. What really counts is effect, not size, nor noise, nor personalities, not even a sense of the colossal. Permanence. Someone quoted the proverb, "Nothing violent is permanent." What a nice hope. I'm sure that everyone would agree with it. It seems a pity that the originator of this saying did not admit his hearers further into his wisdom by giving an example of something which is permanent. The Toads in the Castle. Once, in a reverie, I saw a community of wholly admirable toads. They had taken over and made their home in a castle, obviously, to me, originally built by men. I spoke their language in my dream and asked them to explain to me, as a matter of information, the origins and uses of the various parts of their castle. They were kindly and hospitable toads, and they gave me full details of their lives and thoughts, and the way in which the building was used. Every single aspect of the castle and its surroundings, including the moat and the marshes and reed beds in which it was set, had a thoroughly plausible use and toad origin in theory, indicative of toad thought and toad design, conclusive to the toad mind. I said, "Brothers, forgive my seeming discourtesy, but this place was formed, designed, erected by other beings. It was intended for quite different purposes than you have mentioned." Some did not hear at all. The whole idea was so strange that it did not even register with them. Some said, shortly, "You are a liar, or a cheat." Others, trying to help me, said to one another, "Poor fellow, he is raving mad." That, of course, quite disposed of me. Man and the Tiger. A man, being followed by a hungry tiger, turned in desperation to face it and cried, "Why don't you leave me alone?" The tiger answered, "Why don't you stop being so appetizing?" Thinking and knowing. People think that they think things, and they also think that they know things. They could usefully give some attention to the question of whether they know what they think, and know what they think they know. Teachers and students. People often say, "I must find a teacher who knows all." Some, at least, of such teachers have started by learning wisdom from the ignorant, as some learn conduct from the ill-mannered. Many aspirants could do worse than start at that very point. When you have been your own teacher for a time, you may be ready to find someone else who can teach you. The driver, horse and cart. One day a driver thought, "I'll let the horse and cart go where they like. Maybe I am trying too hard to be the man in control." All went well for a time, since the horse took the cart on its accustomed route. But when the driver willed it to go another way, nothing happened. "I need more willpower and less discipline," said the man to himself. One day the horse thought, "Why should I obey?" And he started to pull the cart as and when and where he wanted to do so. The man sold him to someone who kept him on a very short leash indeed. Yet another time the cart thought, "I will assert my independence. At times my wheels will go, at others I will make them stick. Sometimes I will creak, sometimes not, and I will loosen and contract my nails as and when I feel like it." The cart, pronounced unreliable, was chopped up for firewood. Who cares? It is not only a matter of not caring who knows. It is also a matter of knowing who cares. 3 wishes. A man, after many years of study and effort, found out how to gain power over spirits. He conjured a jinn. The jinn gave him 3 wishes. He immediately wished for money. Spending all his money on high living, he became an alcoholic. His second wish went on making him well again. Now he felt so undecided as to what to do, he used up the third wish to restore himself to his original state and to forget his experiences. Higher perceptions. People imagine that higher perceptions might be attained by developing a certain inner sense. But when a person has been working too much on the development of a certain inner sense, it is necessary to teach him by another method. This method with the concept that the sense can be activated through the exclusion of factors which inhibit its operation. Feed and exercise a lion in a cage, you may get a fine, robust lion. In order to fulfill his destiny, we may have to turn our attention from him to the cage. The Donkey and the Cactus. A donkey was chewing some cactus. A dog came along and said, "What are you eating?" "The most delicious of food," said the donkey. The dog took a bite at it. "You treacherous wretch," he cried. "You have deliberately misled me, and now my mouth is full of spines. The taste of this abominable vegetable is nothing like the juicy meat which I was thinking about." Positive and negative. The way in which a statement is phrased is not what makes it positive or negative. It is positive or negative in accordance with its significance, not its appearance. A no, which is constructive, is far better than a yes, which is not. Because no is something which people don't like because of having heard it often in their childhood, they tend to behave as if it was something bad, that is to say, unpleasing to them. It is only a step, though a mistaken step, from here to be able to call it negative, and therefore not constructive. In the land of fools. Once upon a time there were 3 wise men. They belonged to a place known as Fuzulistan, the land of fools. But this, of course, was only what its uncharitable neighbours called it. The inhabitants called it the country of civilization. These 3 wise men decided that they would go on a journey, because, as everyone knows, travel broadens the mind, and even the most learned can profit by experience. Quite soon after crossing the border, they came across an unusual object. It was a minaret, towering into the sky. "Ha ha," said the first wise man. "Here is an item worthy of our observation. I will set you a test. How did this object come to be here, and what was the manner of its being produced?" The second wise man said, "It is evidently a dead plant or tree. It grew from a seed, or even a certain kind of egg." The third wise man disagreed. "Not at all. This obviously was built. It must have been constructed lengthwise on the ground and then hoisted to its present position." "You are both wrong," said the first wise man, "for it is evident that it was built by a race of giants. They were tall enough to lean down and place this thing here in its present position." It was concluded, after due consultation, that suitable care should be taken by the expedition to preserve itself from the giants, who might, after all, be dangerous. Confession. Confession is good for the soul as an admirable sentiment. It is valuable because it illustrates clearly something that its practitioners will ordinarily go to any lengths to conceal, that here they are not talking about a soul at all. They mean, I have no conception of a soul, and therefore attribute the pleasure which confession induces in me not to its real source, the discharge of surplus emotional energy, but to something sublime. This is a fine example of the real information which we can collect from the hidden language of man. Any number of comforting arguments could, of course, be found to deny or explain away this fact. There is no harm in listening to the arguments, so long as you are prepared to give an equal amount of attention to the observation of other people, to determine whether fact or argument is the more reliable. The spider. A child, dismembering a spider, found that he was left with a number of parts. There were legs, a body, and fur. Being a logical child, he concluded that the legs were from a camel, because camels have legs, the body from an elephant, and the fur from a mouse. Now an adult would never reason like that, would he? Defensiveness. When people are told things which they do not want to hear, they produce or borrow certain standard arguments to enable them to exclude the new information from their relatively closed minds. You can usefully offset this tendency by remembering that the most unfamiliar information is likely to be met by this response. Remember, too, that the things which you already know are mostly facts which would seem to be impossible, unlikely, or even symptoms of paranoia to a man or woman at a lower level of culture than yourself. It is this kind of understanding, not emotional reaction, which will enable you and others to face the truth and to learn more. This podcast is copyright 2016, the Idries Shah Foundation.